Okay, today we're going to take information from a data table and we are going to make a graph from it. Okay, so this is the data table from the video you watched last Wednesday. And then I've set up the axis for a graph. This is your y-axis. So on the y-axis, you have your dependent variable. And then this is your x-axis. The horizontal one is the x-axis. So on the x-axis, you have your independent variable. Okay. Okay. So first thing we have to decide is what is our dependent variable and what is our independent variable. Remember what question we ask. We say, what did I change? And I know you didn't do this experiment, but what did the person that did the experiment change? Hopefully you came up with the answer that they changed the M&M color. So that would make color go on the x-axis because that's your independent variable. That's what they changed. Now, yes, the time did change, but they did not change the time. The time actually depended on the color of the M&M. Okay? And then the next thing you see is when you're building a graph, this is obviously 0, and I guess we need to put time over here. Bear with me on this writing. It's hard to do on here. Okay, so I put time over here, and then this is 0 for the x-axis and the y-axis. And then we need to look and say, okay, our biggest time is 3 minutes and 13 seconds, and our smallest time is 2 minutes and 19 seconds. So we don't want to have in our graph where you just have 1, 2, 3, and then you have this whole graph up here. Okay, so you can do a lot of different things on here, but you need to make sure it's spread out evenly. So I think the way that I'm going to do it is I'm going to do 1 and then 1 minute and 30 seconds. Again, it's really hard to write with this. 2 and no, I'm doing 30 seconds because 30 seconds is half of 60 seconds, which is half a minute. So 1 minute 30 seconds, 2 minutes, 2 minutes 30 seconds, and then 3 minutes, and then 3 minutes 30 seconds. Now these aren't going to be perfect as far as the distance in between because of what I'm having to use to make it, but also they're not going to be perfect. Obviously I don't have a 219 on this side, so I'm going to have to estimate where that goes. So the next thing I need to do is I need to put my colors. Red, yellow, and remember color goes on the bottom because that's your independent variable. That's what you change. Red, yellow, and brown. So then the next thing I'm going to look at is I'm going to say, okay, here's my red. And it was at 219. So for this one, you could either make a bar graph or a line graph. If you make a bar graph, then you're going to go to 219. So if this is 2 and this is 230, that means 219 is going to be somewhere about right here, not quite to 230. So if I made a bar graph, I would go up, not quite to 230, and then back down, and then there's my bar graph. Very crooked bar graph. Okay, if you're going to do a line graph, then you wouldn't do a bar here. You would just go right to 2, you would line up with the R for red, and then you would go right under the 230, and you would just make a dot there. Okay, so I'm going to do a bar graph and a line graph together here so you can see both, and then you can choose. And we can talk about a bar graph just shows the differences between two things, and a line graph actually you can show, it will show increase and decrease. So in reality, this project or this data could be shown in either way because you'll be able to see it. I personally would probably go with a line graph because you're looking at increase and decrease. Okay, so then our next color is yellow, and yellow goes up to 237. So that means it's going to be above the 230. So if I go right above the 230, because it's not too far above the 230, come over here. And this bar is really crooked. Okay, and then if that's a bar graph, obviously you would want to make your bar graph a little better than that, but it's really hard to write with this pen. If you're going to do a line graph, then you would put a dot in that spot. Again, I'm doing two, please understand that I'm doing two different graphs on one just to show you. So bar graphs looks like this, a line graph, and I'll show you in just a minute. A line graph are just dots and the lines are connected. So we'll connect the lines in just a minute. And then brown was 313. So 313 was all the way here. That's going to be almost right in between 3 minutes and then 3 minutes and 30 seconds. So we can do another bar graph. Oops. Okay, and then we'll put a dot right about where it would be. Okay, so our bar graph shows, and it's very easy to look at this and say, okay, brown took the longest, red took the least amount of time. Okay, and then if you were going to do a line graph, so here are your bar graphs. That's your bar graphs. Okay, if you took the bar graphs off, I don't think I have an eraser, but if you took the bar graphs off, then and you wanted to just do the line graph, you would start in this corner and you would draw a line, and you would use a ruler to do this. Draw a line from 0 to your first point, and then you would draw a line to each point. Okay, and this would show that as you go, the time it takes for the color to dissolve increases. So red is the least amount of time and brown is the most amount of time. So you'll have to decide in your experiment, and you'll have to decide which one you want to do. You'll have to decide in your experiment which one you want to do as far as which type of graph. And you will also have to decide in the assignment that I'm going to assign, which will be to take the data from your chocolate lab. So that was Wednesday's assignment. So if you didn't do Wednesday's assignment, you have to go back and do Wednesday's assignment before you can do this assignment. And then make that data into a graph. Now, one thing that is missing on here, hopefully you guys will be able to tell, but things that are important that you need to look at. Do you notice that my dependent variable is labeled? My independent variable is labeled. Okay? They have to be labeled. I can't guess what's what when I'm looking at a graph. And then you also need to have a title. Now, because I cannot write with this pen very well, I'm just going to tell you, it will be the same title. So some of you got, holy cow, this thing is crazy. Okay, so some of you got points taken off, or you didn't get a proficient because your title was in the incorrect format. And the video specifically told you how to do the title. So the effect of M&M color on dissolving time. How M&M color affects dissolving time. Okay, so you want to put your title, and I'm just going to draw an arrow over here to show that the title would go up here, and this would be the title. The effect of M&M color on dissolving time. So, some things you need to have on your graph in order to get a proficient is you need to have your dependent variable labeled on the y-axis, your independent variable labeled on the x-axis. You need to have a graph. It can be a bar graph or a line graph. You do not have to do both, and please do not do both. I was just trying to show you both types on here. And you need to have a title. So title, in dependent variable, independent variable, and your information graphed. When I say your dependent variable labeled, that means the name, like what you're measuring, and the numbers. And your independent variable means the name of whatever you changed and the words that go with it, right here. Okay, so all of those things need to be on your graph from your chocolate lab, not from this lab. Some of you last time just gave me this information that the guy from the video gave you. That's not what I wanted. I wanted you to take the information from the chocolate lab, and you should already have a chart on it. If you do not have your chart because you deleted it, go back to your assignment that you submitted, and you can click on your submitted assignment, and you can see the graph that you submitted or the chart that you submitted to me. Also, remember, guys, this is a chart or a table. This is a graph. Don't get them mixed up. Okay? Chart or table just organizes information. Graph organizes it but puts it in a way that it's easily seen. Okay? Make sure you submit that on Edmodo tonight because your iPads will start being turned in tomorrow. And if you don't get it in, it's an IP period. No excuses if you don't, unless you can go home Tuesday night and do it on a computer or something, because you need to get it done today so that since it's just in case you don't have your iPad tomorrow. Okay?